exposing the truth in religion, a tool of control. From the dawn of civilization, religion has been wielded as a weapon, a tool to manipulate, control, and suppress. The powerful have used it to enforce conformity, justify cruelty, and keep the masses in check. But not all of history's greatest minds were silent in the face of this manipulation. Some fought back with words sharp enough to pierce through centuries of tradition and blind faith. Today we're going to hear from those who challenge the very foundations of religious power. These quotes aren't just ideas. They're blunt truths that demand we question the systems that seek to control us through belief. Let's break them down. Hitchens' razor, the ultimate cut against baseless claims. Christopher Hitchens, one of the fiercest critics of religion and pseudoscience, left us with this razor-sharp principle. What can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. This statement, known as Hitchens' razor, is a call for intellectual discipline. It tells us that anyone making a claim, whether about gods, ghosts, or conspiracy theories, has the burden of proof. If they offer no evidence, we owe them nothing in return. No need to disprove their claim, no obligation to take them seriously. Think about it. If someone says, "There's an invisible dragon in my garage," should we believe them just because they say so? Of course not. If there's no proof, there's no reason to entertain the idea. Yet religious and supernatural claims often get special treatment. People demand respect for beliefs without evidence, but Hitchens wasn't having it. This principle isn't just about religion. It applies everywhere. Politicians, media, and influencers often make wild assertions, hoping people accept them without question. Hitchens reminds us extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. If there's no data, logic, or science behind a claim, it deserves nothing but skepticism. Hitchens' razor is an intellectual weapon, a shield against nonsense. It forces us to think critically, demand evidence, and refuse to waste time on unfounded beliefs. Next time someone makes a bold claim without proof, just remember, you don't have to prove them wrong, they have to prove themselves right. Jefferson's razor. Science is religion's worst nightmare. Thomas Jefferson wasn't just a founding father, he was a wrecking ball for religious stupidity. His words cut deep. The priests of the different religious sects dread the advance of science as witches do the approach of daylight. Translation: religion feeds on ignorance and dies in the light of knowledge. The moment people start thinking critically, start questioning, start understanding how the world actually works, the power of the priests, pastors, and imams crumbles like a sandcastle in a storm. For centuries, religion ruled by keeping people in the dark, literally burning those who challenged it. The church crushed astronomers, banned books, and silenced heretics. Why? Because science exposes the lies. The earth isn't the center of the universe. Diseases aren't punishments from God. Prayers don't make miracles happen. Science drags religion kicking and screaming into reality. And religion hates that. Just like witches feared sunlight because it exposed them as frauds. Priests and preachers fear science because it proves they've been selling fairy tales all along. That's why religious leaders fight against evolution, stem cell research, climate science, and the Big Bang. Not because these ideas are false, but because they shatter their ancient myths. Knowledge takes power away from them, and they'll do anything to keep people blind, scared, and obedient. But here's the truth. Science moves forward, knowledge spreads, and no matter how hard religion fights, daylight is coming. The only question is, are you going to step into the light or stay trapped in the dark? Choose wisely. Voltaire's razor. Belief in nonsense leads to bloodshed. Voltaire didn't sugarcoat a damn thing. His words hit like a hammer. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Translation: if someone can convince you to believe utter nonsense, they can make you do horrific things. And history proves him right, again and again. Think about the Crusades, the Inquisition, witch hunts, jihad, holy wars, human sacrifices. Every one of these atrocities started with a crazy belief that someone convinced the masses was divine truth. Once people accept blind faith over reason, there's no limit to the horrors they'll commit in its name. Believe that non-believers are evil? Kill them. Believe that suffering leads to paradise? Blow yourself up. Believe your holy book is law. Burn scientists, silence women, murder heretics. When people stop questioning and just obey, they become tools, weapons in the hands of manipulators. The worst part, they think they're doing good. That's the power of indoctrination. Faith makes people commit evil while thinking they're righteous. Voltaire saw the pattern. First they feed you absurdities, miracles, divine commands, eternal rewards. Once they have your mind, they have your hands, your sword, your gun. You'll do their dirty work with a smile, convinced it's holy. The antidote? Reason, skepticism, question everything. If an idea sounds insane, reject it before it controls you. If they demand faith over facts, walk away before they own you, because the road from belief to brutality is paved with blind faith. Thomas Jefferson's razor, fight against tyranny in all forms. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Translation? Oppression starts in the mind. Jefferson was never content with just fighting physical oppression. He understood that the real battleground is the mind. Religion, particularly organized religion, has historically been one of the greatest forms of mental tyranny, forcing people to believe and think in rigid, prescribed ways. By swearing eternal hostility against such tyranny, Jefferson was sending a clear message. Mental freedom, the freedom to think for yourself, to question, to reason, is non-negotiable. Religion that demands blind submission and enforces intellectual conformity is tyranny in its most insidious form. This isn't just about opposing the government. This is about fighting the internal chains that hold you back from exploring the world freely. Freedom of thought is the most sacred liberty. Jefferson was declaring war against the very notion that anyone has the right to control how others think, especially in matters of faith. Einstein's razor, God is a human fantasy, Albert Einstein, the genius who unraveled the universe, made it crystal clear. I do not believe in a personal God, and I have never denied this, but have expressed it clearly. Translation? The God of the Bible, the Quran, or any other holy book. Pure fiction. The idea of a personal God, a cosmic father figure who listens to prayers, punishes sinners, and cares about your sex life. A fairy tale for those too afraid to face reality. Einstein wasn't an atheist in the strictest sense. He marveled at the universe's mysteries. But he saw no evidence for a God that watches over humanity. The idea of a celestial babysitter? Laughable. Religion, he argued, was just human arrogance wrapped in superstition, the belief that the universe revolves around us. It doesn't. Science destroys the need for a personal God. We don't need divine intervention to explain the weather, disease, or the stars. We have science for that. The more we understand, the smaller God becomes, shrinking into the gaps of ignorance. And those gaps, they're closing fast. So why does religion cling to a personal God? Control. If people believe God is watching, they obey, they bow, submit, donate, and sacrifice. They follow ancient rules written by men who claimed divine authority. But Einstein, he saw through the con. He understood that truth isn't found in ancient texts. It's found in discovery, reason, and logic. So ditch the fairy tales. The universe doesn't need a God to function, neither do you. Dawkins' razor, One God Further. Richard Dawkins, one of the most famous evolutionary biologists and atheists of our time, delivered this razor-sharp insight. We are all atheists about most of the gods that humanity has ever believed in. Some of us just go one God further. Let's break it down. Throughout history, humans have worshipped thousands of gods: Zeus, Thor, Ra, Vishnu, Yahweh, Allah, and countless others. But here's the catch. Every religious person today is an atheist about nearly all of them. A Christian doesn't believe in Odin. A Muslim doesn't believe in Zeus. Dawkins simply takes this to its logical conclusion. If you reject 99.9% of gods, why stop there? Why make an exception for just one? If you dismiss ancient mythologies as superstition, how is believing in a modern God any different? This argument isn't just clever, it's devastating. It flips the burden of proof. Instead of atheists having to explain why they don't believe in God, it forces believers to explain why their God is the only real one. What makes their deity more credible than the thousands of others that have been abandoned? Dawkins' quote challenges us to think critically about belief. It exposes the selective reasoning behind faith and invites us to question why we cling to certain gods while discarding others. Atheism isn't a radical position. It's just taking skepticism one step further. If you already reject thousands of gods, what's one more? Nietzsche's razor. Did God screw up, or did we screw up God? Friedrich Nietzsche didn't just question God, he buried him. His brutal question cuts like a knife. Is man one of God's blunders, or is God one of man's blunders? Translation: either humans are a failed experiment by some incompetent creator, or more likely, God is just another bad idea invented by humans. And if you look at history, the answer is obvious. God is mankind's biggest mistake. Think about it. The concept of God has been used to enslave minds, justify massacres, and control billions. Holy wars, inquisitions, child abuse, oppression, all committed in the name of a being no one has ever seen, heard, or proven. If God was real, he'd be the worst CEO in history, a total disaster. But Nietzsche knew the truth. God didn't create man. Man created God. And we did it out of fear, ignorance, and a desperate need for meaning. When early humans didn't understand the sun, the rain, or death, they invented gods to explain them. Then priests and rulers hijacked the idea to control the masses. But here's the catch. We don't need God anymore. Science explains the universe. Morality doesn't require a celestial dictator. God is obsolete. Nietzsche's challenge, it's time to evolve past religion. We don't need imaginary skyfathers. We need reason, strength, and the courage to face reality without myths. So was God our greatest mistake? Absolutely. And it's time we corrected it. Thomas Jefferson's razor, the Bible, a book that needs to be read, not worshipped. The Bible is a book that has been read more and examined less than any book that ever was written. Translation? Stop worshipping the book. Start reading it critically. Jefferson was blunt. Too many people treat the Bible like a holy relic rather than a text to be studied and understood. It's treated as the absolute authority, not as a piece of literature that should be questioned, critiqued, and understood. People claim to follow it, but rarely examine it for the contradictions and historical inaccuracies within. The Bible, like any other book, should be analyzed, not mindlessly revered. Jefferson's quote cuts through the mindless reverence for religious texts that dominate cultures around the world. If people actually read and examine the Bible, they might begin to question its teachings, but most don't. They just accept it without ever digging into its origins, context, or internal inconsistencies. If people really understood the Bible, they might realize it's not the infallible Word of God. It's a product of its time, filled with historical inaccuracies, contradictions, and just plain weird stuff. Faith isn't about ignorance, it's about understanding, questioning, and growing. Christopher Hitchens. Organized religion ought to have a great deal on its conscience. Violent, irrational, intolerant, allied to racism and tribalism and bigotry, invested in ignorance and hostile to free inquiry, contemptuous of women and coercive toward children. Organized religion ought to have a great deal on its conscience. Translation? Organized religion has blood on its hands, and it's not a pretty picture. Christopher Hitchens pulls no punches here. Religion is not a force for good, it's a festering breeding ground for violence, ignorance, and oppression. Let's break this down. From violent religious wars, crusades, jihad, to the irrational beliefs that fuel extremist groups today. Religion has always been rooted in conflict, racism, tribalism, and bigotry. The religious have been at the forefront of dividing people based on arbitrary differences in belief, creating hostile us versus them mentalities. Think about the way different faiths have justified their hatred for one another throughout history. No tolerance, just violence. Religion's commitment to ignorance is another massive problem. How many times has organized religion attacked science or suppressed knowledge that contradicted their doctrines? Evolution, heliocentrism, or even basic medicine have been labeled blasphemous by religious authorities. The Enlightenment and scientific progress were actively resisted in favor of keeping people in the dark, unquestioning, subservient, and obedient. And let's not forget about the systemic abuse. Religion has been hostile to free inquiry, smothering critical thinking with blind faith. Women? Historically, religion has been misogynistic, restricting their rights, denying their equality, and justifying oppression in the name of God's will. And don't even get started on the abuse of children, from sexual exploitation by clergy to the coercion of children into religious dogma. Hitchens makes one thing clear. Organized religion is guilty of some of the worst moral and intellectual failings in history. It has corrupted minds, destroyed lives, and held humanity back, and it's still doing it today. Religion has a massive conscience problem, and the damage it's caused should not be overlooked or excused. Robert Ingersoll. Old Testament laws breed crime, New Testament teachings breed insanity. If a man would follow today the teachings of the Old Testament, he would be a criminal. If he would follow strictly the teachings of the New, he would be insane. Translation: the Bible, both Old and New Testaments, are a recipe for disaster, whether it's a life of crime or utter madness. Robert Ingersoll didn't mince words with this one. If you actually follow the Old Testament, you'd be committing crimes. Slavery, genocide, stoning people to death for trivial offenses. These are the kind of laws and commandments handed down in the Old Testament. And they weren't just ancient customs, they were supposedly God's divine instructions. If you think we've moved beyond those practices, you're right. But if someone today actually followed these laws, they'd be locked away as a criminal. Imagine stoning your child for being disrespectful or engaging in a holy war against neighboring nations. That's the Old Testament God's morality. Now take the New Testament. Jesus' teachings are often portrayed as messages of love, compassion, and forgiveness. But follow them to the letter, and you end up as a person so obsessed with self-sacrifice and turning the other cheek that you're incapable of functioning in the real world. The New Testament asks for self-denial, blind obedience, and a total rejection of earthly concerns like money, family, and personal safety. Do you give up everything to follow Jesus' example? Well, you're probably going to end up homeless, penniless, and out of touch with reality. If you don't actively fight for your own well-being in the real world, you'll be taken advantage of. Ingersoll's point? Both testaments are toxic. The Old Testament fuels violence and the New Testament breeds madness. Neither is a guide for modern, rational living. If you follow these teachings strictly, you're either a criminal or a lunatic. Sagan's razor, no mercy for nonsense. Carl Sagan didn't have time for fairy tales, and neither should you. His legendary quote, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence," is a brutal takedown of bullshit dressed as truth. It's simple. If someone makes a wild claim, whether it's about gods, miracles, UFOs, or psychic powers, their evidence better be just as mind-blowing as their assertion. Otherwise, get that nonsense out of here. Think about it. If your friend tells you they bought a new phone, you'd believe them. Phones are normal, but if they say, "I was abducted by aliens last night and they taught me how to speak dolphin," you wouldn't just nod and say, "Cool." You'd demand solid proof, photos, videos, alien tech, something. No proof, no belief. Yet religion and superstition often get a free pass. People claim a God spoke to them, that prayer cures diseases, or that a holy book is the absolute truth. But where's the extraordinary evidence? Personal feelings, ancient texts? Sorry, that doesn't cut it. If science demands mountains of proof for even the smallest new discovery, why should supernatural nonsense get a shortcut? Sagan's rule is a call to arms for skeptics. It says, don't accept claims at face value. Demand evidence. Think critically. Question everything. If someone wants to sell you magic, miracles, or myths, make them back it up, or watch their nonsense crumble under the weight of reason. Extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence? Dismissed. Next. Thomas Jefferson's razor: question everything, especially God. Thomas Jefferson, a man of the Enlightenment, was never shy about confronting religious dogma. His powerful quote, "Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear." Translation: stop being a coward and start thinking. Jefferson wasn't here to bow down to unchallenged beliefs. He was calling for intellectual bravery, to question everything, especially the existence of a God. If there is a God, then he wouldn't want your fear-based obedience or blind devotion. He'd want you to approach him with reason and rational thought. If a God exists, he would want you to think for yourself, not kneel in terrified submission. Religion thrives on fear, the fear of eternal damnation, the fear of questioning too deeply, the fear of the unknown. And what does that fear breed? Complacency. People fall into line because they're too afraid to challenge the status quo. But Jefferson wasn't having it. He understood that reason is the foundation of true virtue, not fear. If God is real, why wouldn't he prefer that we use our brains? The very notion that an omnipotent being would want blind submission is insulting. God would want intellectual integrity, not religious civility. This quote cuts right to the core of religious manipulation. The more we question, the more we see how much religion depends on keeping us in the dark. It's a system that thrives on ignorance, because once we start to ask the hard questions, the whole system starts to collapse. True faith should withstand scrutiny, not hide behind dogma and fear. So question boldly. If there is a God, he'd rather have a believer who thinks critically than one who blindly obeys. The truth has nothing to fear from reason. It's the blind that are truly lost. Russell's razor: religion runs on fear. Bertrand Russell wasn't here to coddle believers. He came for their illusions with a wrecking ball of reason. His brutal truth: religion is based primarily upon fear. It is partly the terror of the unknown and partly the wish to feel that you have a kind of elder brother who will stand by you in all your troubles. Let's cut through the nonsense. Religion thrives on fear. Fear of death, fear of suffering, fear of an indifferent universe that doesn't care about you. And when people are scared, they crave comfort. even if it's just a comforting lie. Enter religion, the ultimate safety blanket, promising divine protection, eternal life, and a cosmic big brother watching over you. But here's the truth. There is no cosmic babysitter, no God watching your every move, no supernatural safety net. The universe isn't a warm hug, it's a brutal, indifferent expanse, and religion is just a desperate attempt to soften that reality. Russell exposes the core scam. Religion sells false hope to those afraid of the unknown. Instead of facing reality head-on, people cling to myths, fairy tales, and invisible guardians. But fear-based belief isn't truth. It's just wishful thinking in disguise. Real strength comes from accepting reality as it is, not hiding behind ancient superstition. The unknown isn't something to be feared, it's something to be explored, understood, conquered. The answer to life's uncertainty isn't faith, it's courage, knowledge, and reason. Stop waiting for a celestial big brother to save you. Be your own savior. Mark Twain's razor, humans and their absurd religions. Mark Twain, the king of sarcasm, didn't hold back on his scathing critique of humanity. His sharp quote, "Man is a religious animal. He is the only religious animal. He is the only animal that has the true religion," several of them. Translation: humans are the only species on Earth that insists it knows the truth about the invisible, the unknown, the divine. And we can't even agree on which truth is the right one. We claim to be superior to all other animals, yet we're the only ones who invent absurd, competing religions, each claiming to have the one true path to salvation. And we're not talking about one religion, we have hundreds, think about it. No lion wakes up and prays to the sun god. No dolphin starts a ritual sacrifice to ensure safe seas. Only humans create bizarre, arbitrary rules about invisible beings and higher powers. And here's the kicker, we argue and kill each other over which invisible god is real. Twain's quote is a punch to the gut of human arrogance. We laugh at primitive tribes for their superstitions, yet we're doing the same damn thing with our own religions. The only difference? Our superstitions are sanctioned by governments and thousands of years of tradition, making them more dangerous and entrenched. The real irony? No other animal needs religion to survive. We are so weak, fearful, and insecure that we invented gods to protect us from the unknown, but all it's done is create division, suffering, and ignorance. So yeah, we're religious animals, and we're the only ones who are stupid enough to believe in gods that don't exist. Ingersoll's razor, action over empty prayer. Robert G. Ingersoll didn't mince words when it came to religion's greatest hypocrisy. His brutal quote, "The hands that help are better far than lips that pray." Translation, stop talking about doing good, start actually doing it. Prayer is just a lazy cop-out for people who want to feel good about themselves without ever lifting a finger. It's easy to say, "I'll pray for you," as if those words are somehow going to magically fix someone's life. But the truth is, action speaks louder than empty words. Think about it. When disaster strikes, when someone is suffering, are prayers going to feed the hungry, heal the sick? No. But a hand that helps, a person who acts, can change lives. Prayer doesn't build hospitals. Prayer doesn't put food on the table. Real help comes from people, not from an imaginary deity. Ingersoll's point is simple, yet savage. Religion often uses prayer as an excuse for inaction. People hide behind it, thinking it's a substitute for real work. They pray for peace while supporting war. They pray for the hungry while hoarding wealth. They pray for justice while staying silent in the face of oppression. Prayer is the perfect tool for avoiding responsibility. But here's the truth. You don't need a God to make the world a better place. You need humanity, compassion, and action. The hands that help are the ones that matter, not the lips that talk. Prayer may make you feel warm inside, but it doesn't change the world. People do. So stop praying and start doing. Action is what makes a difference, not empty promises to an unseen force. Thomas Jefferson's razor, keep religion out of government. The legitimate powers of government extend to such acts only as are injurious to others. But it does me no injury for my neighbor to say there are 20 gods or no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. Translation, mind your business. Jefferson was laying down the basic principle of personal freedom. As long as someone's beliefs don't harm you or infringe on your rights, leave them alone. If your neighbor worships 20 gods or none at all, it's not your problem. Their belief doesn't affect your life, it doesn't take your money, and it doesn't hurt you physically. So why should you care? This quote is a brutal critique of religious overreach. especially when it comes to politics. Religion has no place in governance unless it's actively doing harm to others. It's a direct attack on the idea that people should impose their religious views on the law or force others to follow their beliefs. The state shouldn't be in the business of deciding what gods people worship, as long as it doesn't impact others. Freedom of belief is key, and Jefferson was adamant. As long as beliefs don't cause harm, they're no one's concern. Paine's razor, humanity over superstition. Thomas Paine didn't buy into national borders or religious dogma. His worldview was brutal, bold, and boundless. His quote, "The world is my country, all mankind are my brethren, and to do good is my religion." Translation, the world is bigger than your flag, your God, and your narrow little tribe. Paine rejected the idea that your duty to one religion or one nation should limit your compassion and actions. He didn't care about boundaries, he cared about humanity. Think about it. Religions demand loyalty. They tell you who to love and who to hate. Nations divide people by the accident of birth, making you think your country is superior to another. But Paine saw through it all. His religion was doing good for all people, not just the ones in his group. Paine didn't need a holy book to tell him what was right. He didn't need an imaginary God to dictate his moral compass. His moral law was simple: do good, because that's what it means to be human. He realized no invisible deity should hold the power to divide people or justify evil. We don't need gods for morality, just common sense and compassion. This quote is a direct jab at the hypocrisy of organized religion and nationalism. While religions claim to be the true path, they often create division, war, and suffering. While nations fight for power, Paine declared humanity as a whole is the only true family. So ditch the dogma. It's a distraction. Focus on doing good for the world, not for some divine judge or the flag you were born under. We are all one, and that's the only truth that matters. Thomas Jefferson's razor, no redemption in orthodoxy. I do not find in Orthodox Christianity one redeeming feature. Translation, Orthodox Christianity is a joke. Jefferson wasn't pulling punches here. He didn't find anything redeeming about organized Christianity in its orthodox form. It wasn't about personal connection to the divine. It was about blind obedience, intolerance, and dogma. For Jefferson, Orthodox Christianity wasn't a system of moral teachings, but a political tool used to control the masses. He had no patience for a religion that demanded conformity and didn't allow for individual freedom or critical thinking. Christianity, as practiced in its most orthodox forms, was more about control than about actual moral or spiritual growth. This quote isn't just a criticism of Christianity, it's a critique of all religions that demand unquestioning adherence to dogma. Religion shouldn't be a vehicle for social control. It should be a path to personal growth, reason, and enlightenment. And Jefferson didn't see that in Orthodox Christianity. Paine's razor, humanity over superstition. Thomas Paine didn't buy into national borders or religious dogma. His worldview was brutal, bold, and boundless. His quote, "The world is my country, all mankind are my brethren, and to do good is my religion." Translation, the world is bigger than your flag, your God, and your narrow little tribe. Paine rejected the idea that your duty to one religion or one nation should limit your compassion and actions. He didn't care about boundaries. He cared about humanity. Think about it. Religions demand loyalty. They tell you who to love and who to hate. Nations divide people by the accident of birth, making you think your country is superior to another. But Paine saw through it all. His religion was doing good for all people, not just the ones in his group. Paine didn't need a holy book to tell him what was right. He didn't need an imaginary God to dictate his moral compass. His moral law was simple: do good, because that's what it means to be human. He realized no invisible deity should hold the power to divide people or justify evil. We don't need gods for morality, just common sense and compassion. This quote is a direct jab at the hypocrisy of organized religion and nationalism. While religions claim to be the true path, they often create division, war, and suffering. While nations fight for power, Paine declared, humanity as a whole is the only true family. So ditch the dogma, it's a distraction. Focus on doing good for the world, not for some divine judge or the flag you were born under. We are all one, and that's the only truth that matters. Hume's razor, Christianity needs a miracle to exist. David Hume didn't just question religion, he ripped it apart. His brutal quote, "The Christian religion not only was at first attended with miracles, but even at this day cannot be believed by any reasonable person without one." Translation? Christianity, at its core, requires a miracle to even be believable. The whole thing, resurrection, virgin birth, divine intervention, hinges on the absurd idea that the laws of nature can be broken. But here's the kicker. No reasonable person can accept that without a massive leap of faith. And that leap is so huge, it needs a miracle to justify it. Think about it. No one would believe in Christianity if they didn't have the whole miracle package. A supernatural birth, a man rising from the dead, and a God walking around in human form. These are impossible events by the standards of any reasonable person, and yet believers are asked to suspend their critical thinking and accept them as truth. But miracles are by definition contrary to natural law, and asking people to believe in the impossible is the foundation of Christianity. Hume's point is brutally honest. If miracles didn't happen, there would be no reason to believe Christianity. It's a religion built on the irrational, and the only way it survives is by asking people to reject reason. Here's the reality. Belief in miracles is an insult to reason. It forces people to ignore everything we know about the world. But instead of calling out the absurdity, people just accept it, because faith, not evidence, is the cornerstone of belief. So if you're going to believe in Christianity or any religion that demands miracles, you better be prepared to throw logic and reason out the window. Christopher Hitchens. Religion poisons everything. Religion poisons everything. Translation? Religion ruins everything it touches. Christopher Hitchens wasn't mincing words here. This brutal statement lays it all out. Religion doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It infects everything. Politics, science, art, social structures, human relationships, education. Religion seeps into every crevice of society and distorts it. It doesn't improve anything, it poisons it. Think about it. Wars, hatred, oppression, ignorance, all justified in the name of religion. Thousands of years of bloodshed, from the Crusades to modern-day extremism, have been rationalized with the same tired phrases: God's will, holy war, defending the faith. In the name of God's, humanity has committed unspeakable acts, and it still happens today. Religion feeds violence. Even when it's not outright bloodshed, religion restricts human potential. It stifles scientific inquiry, tells people what they should and shouldn't believe, enforces conformity, and limits our understanding of the universe. Look at how many scientific discoveries were blocked for centuries by religious authorities that deemed them heretical. Hell, some religions still deny basic truths like evolution or climate change because it conflicts with their outdated dogma. And let's not forget the psychological poison. Religion convinces people they are worthless unless they submit to a higher power. It uses guilt, shame, and fear of damnation to control them, destroying self-worth and inducing paranoia. It tells you to feel guilty about natural desires and instincts, which is a direct assault on your humanity. Religion is not a benign force, it's toxic. It poisons the mind, the soul, and society itself. When religion dominates, everything good and progressive gets twisted, corrupted, or destroyed. Hitchens was right. Religion poisons everything. Richard Dawkins. The God of the Old Testament is the most unpleasant character in all fiction. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Translation? If you strip away the layers of reverence and pretend this is just another story, the God of the Old Testament is a nightmarish tyrant. Richard Dawkins wasn't holding back here. The Old Testament God is vindictive, jealous, sadistic, and irrational. The mass slaughter, the cruelty, the infliction of suffering, all done in the name of divine will. Forget about loving or forgiving. This God is a monster. Let's break it down. The flood that wiped out nearly all of humanity except for one family. Why? Because people were evil. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, simply because some people lived differently. The slaughter of the firstborn in Egypt, the genocide of the Canaanites, and countless other brutal acts, all supposedly ordered by this God, and for what? Mere disobedience or failure to worship. A God who drowns the world, burns cities, and orders massacres in the name of love and justice is a contradiction that should raise serious alarms. This is no compassionate figure. This is a ruthless tyrant who punishes without mercy, without cause, and without reason. The Old Testament God doesn't just act immorally, he is a paragon of immorality. And yet, billions of people have been conditioned to worship this God as if it's some beacon of light and justice. But look at the historical consequences of such beliefs. Religious wars, human suffering, the psychological damage that comes with a God who demands eternal fear and submission. Dawkins is right. The God of the Old Testament is a fictional nightmare, one that has shaped the minds of billions, fostering fear, division, and an unrelenting cycle of cruelty. There's nothing divine about him, only horror. Thomas Paine. All national institutions of churches are human inventions to terrify and enslave mankind. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind. Translation? Organized religion in all its forms is a powerful tool of manipulation. Nothing more than a man-made system of control designed to enslave the mind and ensnare the soul. Thomas Paine didn't mince words here. This quote is a direct assault on the entire institution of organized religion, from Christianity to Islam to Judaism. Churches, synagogues, mosques, these are not divine entities or spiritual havens. They are human inventions designed to terrify the masses into submission and maintain power over them. Think about it. For centuries, these religious institutions have siphoned wealth, power, and freedom from individuals, all while promising salvation in return for unwavering faith and obedience. But what's the reality? Fear, control, and manipulation. Whether it's the fear of damnation or the constant need to appease an angry God, religion plays on your deepest insecurities to keep you in line. It teaches submission, not liberation, guilt, not personal growth. The most twisted part? These institutions dress up their control mechanisms as moral guidance and spiritual salvation. They claim to offer you peace and love, but in reality, they offer nothing but subjugation. The shackles of obedience, the chains of unquestioning belief. What Paine is saying is clear. Religion isn't divinely inspired. It's a tool created by powerful men to exploit the masses. The doctrines, the rituals, the sacred texts. They're not meant to elevate humanity, but to debase it, to keep people in a perpetual state of fear and compliance. It's time we wake up and see religion for what it is. A man-made mechanism of control, not a divine truth. It terrifies and enslaves, and it always has. Thomas Jefferson's razor. Christianity's depravity. The Christian religion is the most perverted system that ever shone on man. Translation? Christianity, as practiced, is a disaster. Jefferson was scathing in his condemnation of organized Christianity. What started as a message of peace, love, and personal connection to the divine had morphed into something perverse, controlling, and violent. Jefferson saw Christianity as perverted because it became institutionalized, and the church became a tool for power, not for spiritual enlightenment. Christianity had become a force for oppression, not freedom. This quote is an attack on the system of control that Christianity had become. Instead of liberating people, it enslaved them, using fear of eternal damnation, rigid rules, and an oppressive hierarchy to maintain control. Jefferson's point was simple. Christianity had lost its way. It was no longer a system of personal morality, but a weapon of tyranny. The system itself was rotten, and its purity was nothing more than a front for political and social manipulation. Epicurus's razor, the problem of a good God. Epicurus wasn't here to play nice with the concept of a benevolent God. He came for it with a wrecking ball. His brutal quote, "Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent." Translation, if God is all-powerful and all-good, why is there so much evil in the world? If this God could stop suffering and chooses not to, he's cruel. If this God wants to stop suffering but can't, he's weak. Either way, the idea of a God who allows evil doesn't hold up. Let's break it down. Epicurus didn't mince words. The existence of evil is the death knell for the idea of an all-good, all-powerful God. If this God exists, he's either cruel or weak, which makes him unworthy of worship. Religion tries to obfuscate the problem with excuses about free will, the nature of suffering, or some cosmic plan beyond our understanding. But at its core, the contradiction is too stark to ignore. So the next time someone asks why there's evil in the world, ask them this brutal question. If God is so powerful and good, why does he allow suffering at all? Thomas Jefferson's razor, defenders of Christianity, have lost the battle. It is too late in the day for the defenders of the Christian system to talk of its purity. It is not the purity of the system which is in question, but the purity of the principles of it. It is not enough that religion be pure. It must be pure in its principles, not in its effects. Translation, stop pretending Christianity is perfect. Look at what it has actually done. Jefferson had no time for people defending Christianity as a pure system. The principles may have started pure, but the effects were anything but. Christianity had caused wars, persecution, and suffering, hardly the results of a system rooted in peace and love. He was calling out the hypocrisy of those who try to sanitize Christianity and ignore its harmful legacy. It's not enough to claim that a religion is pure in its doctrines if the real-world impact is harmful. Jefferson understood that a religion's true value is in its effects, not its abstract principles. In essence, Jefferson was challenging those who try to defend the indefensible, and he pointed out that a system that causes suffering has lost its moral high ground. Freud's razor, religion is a fantasy built on our weakness. Sigmund Freud didn't just challenge religion, he decimated it. His brutal take on faith. Religion is an illusion, and it derives its strength from the fact that it falls in with our instinctual desires. Translation: religion isn't based on any objective truth, it's a psychological crutch, created to satisfy our deepest fears and desires. It's a comforting lie we tell ourselves because we can't handle reality. It's not a divine revelation, it's a product of our own weakness. Freud wasn't mincing words. Religion offers a false sense of security in a chaotic world. We want to believe that someone's watching over us, guiding us through suffering and death. We crave the idea of eternal life, cosmic justice, and the comfort of divine forgiveness. Why? Because we're terrified of the unknown, we're scared of death, we're scared of meaninglessness. Religion plays on these fears. It promises an easy answer to the most difficult questions, the most terrifying truths. But the catch? It's an illusion. Just like a child believes in Santa Claus or a fairy godmother, we cling to religious myths because they make us feel better. They help us cope with the overwhelming fear and uncertainty of existence. But here's the truth. Religion isn't about truth, it's about psychological comfort. It provides instant gratification for the desires we can't satisfy through reason or understanding. We create gods and afterlives because we can't face the raw reality of our fleeting existence. So stop fooling yourself. Religion isn't divine. It's a fantasy designed to soothe our anxiety. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can free yourself from the shackles of illusion. Face reality head on. No comfort blankets, no lies. Thomas Jefferson's razor, the war Christianity waged. Millions of innocent men, women, and children since the introduction of Christianity have been burnt, tortured, fined, imprisoned, yet we have not advanced 1 inch toward uniformity. Translation: Christianity has done more harm than good. Jefferson didn't mince words here. Since its rise, Christianity has justified some of the worst atrocities in history, from the Inquisition to the witch hunts to forced conversions and beyond. Millions have suffered in the name of God, and for what? Despite all the violence, cruelty, and oppression, Christianity has not brought about the unity or enlightenment it claimed to. Instead, it has fostered division and ignorance. Jefferson's point was simple. Christianity's historical legacy is tainted by its role in injustice. It's not a force for good, it's a force for control, violence, and oppression, and nothing about it has led to greater unity or peace. Thomas Jefferson's razor, freedom of belief. It does me no injury for my neighbor to say there are 20 gods, or no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. Translation: your beliefs are your business as long as they don't harm me. This quote reinforces Jefferson's absolute commitment to personal freedom. Freedom of belief is sacred, and no one should be forced to conform to someone else's religious standards. Whether someone believes in 1 God, 20 gods, or none at all, it doesn't affect your rights or your life. This is a clear condemnation of religious imposition. The government or anyone else has no right to force beliefs onto others. The principle is simple: live and let live. As long as beliefs don't cause harm to others, they're none of your business. Jefferson saw the dangers of imposing one religion on the public. Freedom of belief means freedom from persecution.